Hey, it's hammer time. Very special episode of Hammer Time. We're here from Flagstaff right after our most successful ever Environmental Sustainability Summit. The final speaker is Arizona's own Henry Darwin, who's the acting deputy director at EPA. Welcome.
Thank you.
First thing I want to say, this is a legitimate fireside chat. It's hot.
Yes.
It is real.
It's hot, yes.
You were one of the architects within Governor Ducey's office of lean management, which has changed the way we deliver state government services. Can you talk a little bit how you've helped with, after that experience, sort of take the show to DC, to take some of those principles to improve the performance of the Environmental Protection Agency?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, for those of you who know my background, I think you know as well, is that I worked at the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality for 18 years. So my true professional passion has been environmental protection. When Governor Ducey was elected, he saw what I was doing at Arizona DEQ. I mean, literally saw it. I mean, he came and did a tour of our agency, and because of the nature of the way we deploy lean, it's all about making our work visible, so he could see the work that we're doing, he could see the progress that was being made. And once he saw that, I think he was sold on this idea of using lean management to improve the operations of the state. And I was doing that, as you mentioned, for all 35 agencies before I left. But because my true passion is environmental protection, because I felt we had a unique opportunity as a country to engage management principles under this administration, under, once again, another example of a leader that began their career, the vast majority of their careers in the business sector, to start treating the operations of government more like a business.
Can you talk a little bit about the challenges? $9 billion budget, 14,000 employees, 10 regional offices. How do you make that work?
Well, that's all of those statistics are correct, and it makes the job that I'm doing there even more difficult because it's been at least 30 years, if not longer, since the last time that somebody paid close attention to the management of the organization. And as I have said, this is not. I'm not blaming previous administrations. I'm not trying to belittle the work that previous administrations had done. They all had their priorities. And we all have a limited amount of time to do what we can while we're in federal service. By design, we're there for 4 years, sometimes 8 years. And with an organization that size, you have to pick your priorities. The fact of the matter is that previous administrations just did not choose management as one of those priorities.
And one of the things I've learned from Governor Ducey's administration, it's taken me about 5 years to figure this out, is that it's always fun and it's a sexier part of the job to talk about policy. Yes. and all those things. But if you have the trains running on time, if you have the place running well, you have more resources and more ability to actually get good policy out there.
Well, I'm a big advocate for this idea that good government rests on 3 pillars, and that is the alignment of policy, operations, and budget. If those 3 things aren't aligned, if those 3 things aren't managed well, then you can't accomplish any of them. So yes, I absolutely believe that policy is driven by operations and budget, but I also say that the governor's office used to joke about the fact that the work that I was doing was #dull but important.
No, that's, and I apologize if I retweeted some of those hashtags. During your comments, you mentioned something that was super interesting, and we had several hundred people, and these are people that really know their stuff. And to me, you broke some news here. For decades, I believe we've had a national policy on enforcement.
That's right.
You said earlier today that you're working on a national policy on the permitting side.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the two primary functions that the federal government delegates to the states on environmental protection have to do with compliance enforcement being one and permitting being the other. And for decades, there have been national policies and a framework for evaluating the state's adherence to those policies when it comes to compliance and enforcement. But on the permitting side, there has never been a national policy nor a framework on how to evaluate whether or not the permitting programs that are implemented by the states are following national standards, consistent national standards across the country, and EPA has no means by which they're evaluating on a consistent basis the work that's being done by the states. The fact matter is that upwards of 95% of the federal environmental permits are issued by the states. Less than 5% of them are issued by EPA. So this is a fundamental, foundational issue that we are now addressing for the first time in this administration.
How can the customers, the regulated community, states like Arizona that sort of have it in their DNA that they like reform and they like improved efficiency, how can we help make this policy not only the best it possibly can be, but one that sticks around?
Yeah, so one of the things that I was speaking about earlier today was this idea that a lot of the management tools and techniques that we're now deploying throughout the Trump administration is based upon laws that have been passed by Congress through the last several decades. And Congress has a very important role in overseeing the federal agencies, not only their policies, but also their operations. And I think that's one of the things that our members of Congress could be doing better and more of, and that is evaluating or getting involved with the operations of our federal agencies and making sure that they're following the various congressional mandates that exist in the management space.
Yeah, because you also mentioned, it was very interesting, that there are actually laws on the books that require well-managed agencies.
Yes, and in this political environment, there was a law that was actually passed last year, a bipartisan effort to require federal agencies to use evidence and data in making policy and managing their operations.
Final question. Biggest difference or differences that you see between running a massive federal agency and a state agency?
So it may be trite, but the fact matters is that this was something that both Ben Grumbles, who was the former director I worked for at DEQ, who went to EPA, and Steve Owens, who went from Arizona DEQ director to being at EPA, they both told me the same thing about their experience with comparing state and federal government, and that is that the things in federal government just move so slow as compared to the states. Both of them said that, and I would absolutely agree with them. The federal government moves very slowly as compared to the states, which for states it's a good thing, but the federal government it's not such a good thing.
You have had a distinguished track record of public service in Arizona and now on the federal side, and I will make a prediction. Just as your work in Arizona has stuck, your work on the federal level will be with us for decades to come, because it's good government service.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thank you.